perspective, or a more refined perspective, just in relation to me and my perception of the other, anyone I'm responding to, anyone that I'm perceiving in their response to me. I've had the practice of, and maybe I was being a little too militaristic about this in terms of like communication. If I'm detecting any static or anything like that, I really want to pivot. And I'm seeing where that was more like a shutdown, where my communication, I will try to exit as soon as possible out of a conversation, because I don't want to explain myself. I don't want to get into that. Soothing someone's discomfort about something or helping them feel better about what they're perceiving I'm doing. And I can't deny there's an insane amount of tension in it, and I'm just trying to figure out like the level of not give a damn versus wading into it and having those conversations. I am seeing a love, like I just tried, okay, let me just talk to them about the situation. Let's just talk about it. And feeling the immense relief from the person I'm speaking to, other than being completely surprised that I had constructed that many sentences on the subject, which is a change of pace for me. I'm like really short and like to the point in general. So I'm really just looking for this balance because I can feel the relief in it. I don't know if it's just this part of me where I just don't want to entertain that. And I'm just looking for clarity on that.
So you want to be selective in your inclusiveness, or you want to be fully inclusive, and we say your nature is boundless and therefore you are naturally always longing, always looking to be as inclusive as possible. And that is what builds the tension, not the conversations that they're having, but you in your steadiness not being steady enough to include those conversations too. And so we say, when you feel like you're steady, when you feel like you're not steady, when you feel like something is throwing you off, the best thing is to cover that mirror. And you say, there is a conversation that starts throwing me off, and you might feel steady, but in a fear that you might be thrown off from your steady because someone else is not steady, because you've gotten to the place of steady and you walked that walk that they were walking and you figured it out and now you don't want to do it. There is resistance in that. There is fear in that. There is a certain amount of discomfort and fear in that, where you say, I know that I've walked the walk and they need to walk their walk, but I don't want to be part of them walking their walk because I already walked the walk and I don't need to walk that walk again. And I do not want to walk that walk because I don't want to be back to walk the walk that they're walking and I used to walk. And so we say that is true only when you are not done walking the walk. In other words, you think that you walked the walk, but you actually did not walk the walk because those things are throwing you off. And we say that's okay. When you get to that perspective of something is throwing you off, you recognize within you, well, there is this conversation. The way I get to not be thrown off by this is I cover the mirror, I put my head in the sand, or they have their head in the sand and I'm already going to look elsewhere. And that's what you call pivot. And that is helpful for you, but only temporarily. That does not satisfy you long term. That does not satisfy you for quite some time. That cannot satisfy you eternally, for as you're looking for these things as a next layer for you not to bother. In other words, you're so steady that you can hear someone, but it does not affect your steady. And while you're not offering anything, while you're not engaging into the conversation per se, you do not need to pivot. So pivot is there. You pivot and move around when something is throwing you off, or there is a fear that something might be throwing you off, which means if the fear is activated, if the thought of a fear is has activated within you, that it means it's active, which means that you're already thrown off. And so we say, if you feel like you need to pivot, you recognize it. I need to pivot. I'm going to take a minute bathroom break and I'm going to go and come back and see how I can get to steady. your mind, you close your eyes for a moment, you go back to conversation, see how long you can stay, and you will see that in you do not need to wait for this conversation to be completely over. You do not need to walk out completely from conversation. For as if you have the tool to get you to steady, it takes only a moment. It can't take a moment for you not even leaving the room in order to do that if you have the tools to get you to steady. And so once you get to experience this few times, it's a fun game to play. How often can you go to the restroom based off of how much your friend is complaining? It's a very fun game. Kosta has been doing this at all times. When he would not be able to do that, he would feel he's not steady, he would just go to restroom. Armand would continue talking. Sometimes he would joke. Often he would joke, blabbing with them about a lot of different things. He would do this even on the dinners. They would host the dinners and Armand would talk and talk and people would complain and they would share all of this focus, and he would feel when he's not steady to include it, he would just walk in and out. The moment that conversation starts throwing him off, he would go and wash the dishes, come back. He would go back and organize things. He would always look for Armand to give him tasks so he can go and talk to them while he can practice this balance and this steady. And so once you play this game a little bit, you will see that more and more you get to steady, more and more you're inclusive. And then these somebody else walking the walk does not bother you because you are also walking the walk too. You're consistently walking the walk. It's just these talks are not really bringing you and throwing you off, whereas you're ready to include them. In other words, you're so steady, but you're so steady that you can look back in things that reminded you of what you might have had going on. Because if something is throwing you off, it's a sure bet that you had something throwing you off like that in the past, that you've lived it, that you had that experience and that you found a way. And in you being so steady and not really being in a place of that conversation continuing to bother you, but to be softer and softer within you, well, now you're holding the steady while someone else might be saying this old story, and soon enough they start being open for other perspectives. For when you can start sharing the places, you can start sharing your experiences from the point of steady, and therefore this is how you can affect others if they are ready and when they're ready to move into more of their own steady. In other words, this is your desire at all times, and will bring it even further for you, for as they are a reflection of you. And what more satisfying it is than that the reflection of you is satisfying too. In other words, you say, within me and on a perimeter of me, I know how to cover the mirror. I know how to keep myself steady. I know how to pivot back to steady when I feel like I'm about not to be steady. And we say, that's all lovely and wonderful, but what about these reflections? Not to be only wonderful or not to be only unsteady, but that you do not care what the reflection is. How about you do not care about that? How about you be so steady that that's the only thing that you don't give a damn, as you say? In other words, not about not giving, because you will always give a damn about others, not because of that, not in the amount that throws you off, but you will always give a damn, or you will always care about what the others are bringing back to you, not what they think from their perspective of self and the measurement, but because of that is reflection of you, and that is the next angle of you, bringing you more opportunities for more of your steady to come through. And therefore it's safe to say that you will always give a damn, you will always care about the reflections coming through from you, because you want to include all of it. You want to be so inclusive that positive or negative emotion, you see the equal value. That the question and the answer, you see the equal value. And you have such an equal value for all of it, then it does not matter to you for what is going to be reflecting back to you until it starts taking the turn in one direction or the other direction too much. But even with that, as we said to a friend, even if it's the positive reflection, it's still reflection. You will come to the place of unfocus. If it's a negative, nagging, complaining reflection, well, you will unfocus and get again back to your calm, simply being and steady. And so all of it is wonderful for you. But for you to say that you want to balance out this, you're balancing out how much are you ready to include at that very moment. That is really the only game you're ever playing.
That's delicious. And it highlights person I was speaking to, but there was just really a gold nugget of information this person was giving me at the time, where I would have originally been like, I feel resistance, I'm not going to listen to any advice being told here. But there was just some really juicy information.
Well, let's take that even further. Let's take that even further. That the reflections or others talking to you back as an angle to you is really valuable information. It's you from a variety of angles. But when you open up inclusiveness, what about this conversation mean to someone else? Am I steady enough that it does not matter what comes out, but it means to them? For is it to some of your friends at some point, it means for them to say those questions. And sometimes it means to them for you to provide them that which is the flow of an answer. Sometimes it means to them that you're going to tell them, do not nag yourself and me at the time because it's not serving you, because it's all beneficial. All interaction in mutuality is beneficial at all times.